Oh my gosh, we did the same thing. Hey, Dustin, welcome everyone. Hey, it's Friday. That means it is time for another exciting episode, another brand new episode of Because Cannabis here on Wayward Media. It's me, BC Wayman, over there, whichever way he's on, whichever box. Hey, Dustin, welcome back. We missed you last week, man. It was not fun to be this solo. I missed having you here to kind of converse and talk with and kind of hang out with during the show. You literally start this show. Here's what happened. First show back, muted mic, Dustin. Look at that. First show back, muted mic. Look at what happens. Hey, it's what happens when you don't. Look, being successful is about habits, building good habits. Got to be here every Friday to build good habits. Welcome back, man. How you doing?
I was just about to make the statement that you had all the technical difficulties because I wasn't there. And then the mic. But you know what? I've had a great week. It's actually been a super productive week.
That is exciting to hear. I am excited for our guest today, Dustin. Got a colleague of mine, but someone who I think it's fair to say is smarter than both of us combined when it comes to the scientific aspects, the testing, the medicinal uses. We got a lot of people out there who are patients who talk about the medicinal uses of cannabis. We're going to take a deep dive into the neuroscience behind that today. Dr. Hemant Kumar Bid joining us today. Trained for many, many years, studied master's and Ph.D. in medicinal testing and stuff. So it'll be exciting to see. Welcome to Because Cannabis. Have you checked out the new website Dustin's been working on? Dustin's been working hard on that. Wayward.media. Check it out. Lots of new updates coming all the time. So all of the great shows. Anthony Trav and his game streaming that's going on. World of Warcraft fans, be sure to check that out. All the past episodes on their YouTube channel, right? Wayward Media's. Find us on YouTube. Give us a subscribe. If you're watching it right now, reach your mouse, take your finger, put it on the button, hit it. Just hit it. Hit subscribe. Help us out. We'd really appreciate that. Obviously, check us out on social media. Haven't really been posting a ton. We got to get that ramped up, Dustin, right? You keep telling me marketing 101's about getting the social media out there. So that's my job, people. We'll get on that this week, Dustin. I promise you.
Perfect practice, man. It's getting there. The process is getting dialed in.
It is. I like it.
Proud of the process so far.
It's been fun. It's been fun doing this, getting to know a lot of different people. I actually kind of miss our news-centric shows where we get to follow up and catch up on what's happening. But these have been fun. These interviews, they help educate us. I hope they're helping make you smarter, feel a little bit. We've had some great conversations, Reverend Kelly Addison and Alan Katz so far. We got some great ones booked. But today's a good one. Today's a good one if you're paying attention to this one. And I think you do need to pay attention because the man about to enter the studio, he's super smart. He's devilishly handsome. He's all of those things combined. Dr. Hemant Kumar Bid. Oh my gosh, I told myself I wasn't going to screw that up. Hemant, to his friends and family. How you doing, man?
Good, BC. How are you doing? Thank you for having me. Hello, Dustin. How are you doing?
Well, I am super excited to talk to you. As I was saying a little bit in the beginning, Hemant is a colleague of mine, works with me at the Cleveland School of Cannabis, but he has well moved beyond that. That's how I met him. And he came in just right back out to more further great adventures, as whether it's education, working at a variety of places, including St. Louis University, as well as the Cleveland School of Cannabis, but also putting in the work, as it says, opening up and help be a part of opening up a new lab in Columbus, Ohio, in Ohio's Medicinal State Testing Program, CP Labs. Is that correct, Hemant?
Yes.
So, I mean, that has been exciting. Well, let's start there then. How has it been to come here, start this journey, thinking about the educational aspect of it, and then transitioning more into the practical, I'm going to do this, be involved, kind of helping run a testing lab, something you only kind of thought about before. What's that transition be like? Public education to private sector testing?
No, I think that, it's a great experience because, like I said, that, coming from 22 years of clinical and translational research, working in the clinical labs and CLIA-CAP certified lab. And then after that, before even joining the CP labs, I was in Ohio Department of Health in the newborn screening department. So where we used to actually use all the instrumentation that what we use for the testing, but the applicability of those instruments were different because it's a newborn screening department. So we screen many different metabolites for the newborns, so that any metabolic disorders, etc. So it was a kind of a wonderful experience there with Ohio Department of State. But definitely that when I started Cleveland School of Cannabis and getting into cultivation with you. That was a wonderful experience. And then after that, developing a lot of curriculum for CBD comprehensive endocannabinoid system, cannabis research, etc. Blow my mind basically that
Mm.
like how the field is growing and how much research has been already done and which direction we are moving is amazing. So that actually leads me to start thinking about that, okay, so if this is the case and I have analytical experience, I have the pharmacological experience, so why not utilize those experience in educate people, as well as the most important thing is that when you educate and when you support medical cannabis, one of the biggest thing which comes to the mind that we are treating cannabis as a medicine.
Mm.
Are we able to provide that level of purity and potency to the patients or not? And that can only happen because if you do the testing in the right way and science driven testing. So that's what CP Lab is. And we are very, very excited to start the lab. We are one of the 5 provisional labs in Ohio that we are starting. And right now that we are in the process of, validating our methods and everything, very soon we will be up running the end of the month. And we have a very great team. Our president, Brett Dalkey, he moved from Colorado to start this lab. So it's an amazing journey with him, and as well as our CEO, Scott Jarrett, who is a big entrepreneur, and we have a great team here. So I'm looking forward for see this journey, that how it goes, and testing all the great stuff in the market so that patients will get the better product with respect to either it is cannabinoid profiling, either it is a terpene percentage, and as well as that, like I said, that the industry is growing so fast that when more and more technology is coming in each and every prospect, either it is cultivation, either it is extraction, any angle. So then if the extraction is so much expanding, that means we have to be cautious about the residual solvents, and that's what the testing labs do, to test about the residual solvent. And then after that, as cultivation is growing, that what are the different species are there, what kind of different mold, mildew, bacteria, aspergillus, salmonella contaminations, which is not good for any human being, but more and more dangerous for the immunocompromised patients. For example, that there are a lot of patients that who are immunocompromised, but they have anxiety and depression. They wanted to take CBD based medication to control their depression and anxiety, right? So we have to give those medications to them. And as well as that, like we know that one of the best and one of the first FDA approved drug, Epidiolex, which is specifically approved for more than 2 years old children for a specific form of epilepsy, which is Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, and two types of specific syndrome, Dravet syndrome and Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. So of course that we are giving to children's. So that means we have to treat very cautiously that there is no residual solvents are there, there's no pesticides there, and as well as that this field is expanding so much that we have to be very cautious about that how much we are giving to the patients. So that means it should not be like that, that okay, certificate of analysis is saying that there are 9 milligrams, and then in the product there's more or less. Because but the one of the biggest issue in this field is the standard treatment protocol, because the purity and potency of the compounds or all the different cannabinoids is not standardized throughout the country.
I think that's something I know, and that's you feel like. First of all, that's like 19 different threads of conversation, Hemant. I have to go down here. So you got so much information, but let's end there because I know Dustin right before going on, when Dustin found out I helped get you on the show, that's the very first thing you told me, Dustin, was about like the integrity, or I guess standardization of this industry is it's a little suspect, right?
Yeah, it's a big challenge there, but we are at the edge of that, where we are trying to figure it out a lot of things, right? The first thing that we are figuring it out, that what are the best techniques that we can use to test the purity and potency, right? Residual solvent, heavy metals which is in the water, different kind of terpene percentage, and then mycotoxins, etc. And of course that there are a lot of salmonella, fungus, etc., right? And then we are figuring out that what are the different conditions that plant can go better and produce a lot of different good cannabinoids. And then as a scientist that we are always curious, because plant that so far that more 150 cannabinoids are already been discovered in the plant, then like, okay, so there are major cannabinoids, CBD, TSC, CBN, CBG, but there are so many different minor cannabinoids. Then as a scientist, we are always keep thinking that what are the role of these cannabinoids, right? So
Yeah.
then we always think that, like, okay, what are the role of these cannabinoids, and why so far that only we studied CBD and THC? The reason being is that these are the major cannabinoids and plant is producing. That means we have a huge material in hand to explore and do a lot of research. But rest of the things are plants produce in a very small amount. Okay, so then if this is the case, then we are smarter than nature. We use the very advanced technology, which is CRISPR-Cas technology, which is a gene editing technology, and agriculture geneticists, they use this technology to create a lot of hybrid plant so that overexpress a specific gene so that they can overexpress the specific minor cannabinoids, whatever they are interesting, because as human genome is already cracked down, similarly cannabis plant genome is already cracked down. So that means we know the each and every sequence, that what sequence is responsible for what kind of specific cannabinoids. So tweaking those ones, and then after that making the hybrid plants, and then getting a lot of plant material is a big advantage for us to explore the activity and to explore the medicinal value of the specific cannabinoids in the field.
I mean, so I guess what you're expressing that there are all these entities within all these cannabinoids within the plant that we still have yet to delve into and digest. I guess what are some of the barriers that are preventing the research to be done in that regard?
So one of the biggest thing is that, like we are talking about that, like again, we are talking about, if we are talking about the clinical research, consistency of the purity and potency of the product is one of the biggest challenge. For example, if BC is sitting in the DC and treating a Parkinson patients, and after a year treating like 150 patient, and he publish a data that okay, combination of certain percentage of CBD THC with certain kind of like terpenes is very very valuable, and he has a very good output for his patients. And then after that you are sitting maybe like New Orleans, and you saw that and you said, oh my god, this is a really good publication, let's use this data, lose this information for my patients, right? But
Right.
you don't have the access of the same amount of like the compounds, or the same quality of compound, the same quality of the plant that
So even
what
like
he is
the
using, right?
soil and stuff, right? Like soil and water type all could affect what you're
Everything,
saying. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So this plant is amazing that every small thing actually affects the percentage of the cannabinoids in the plant. But along with that, it's not only that, because we all humans are different. Cannabis-based therapy is more kind of like personalized therapy. Everybody respond differently to cannabis-based therapy based on that what kind of genetics they have,
Mhm.
age, gender, and that so what happened that like most of the like discussions what I have, that people ask that in a clinical setting, that why there are so many different kind of products sitting there, why we need so many different kind of products. And the best explanation is because we all are different, our genetics are different. That means everybody is going to respond differently, but every patient is coming from a different background. Maybe some patients have already hypothyroidism, and they are taking the hypothyroidism medicine, and they cannot live without that levothyroxine, right?
Mhm.
So that means as a clinicians that you have to understand about the interaction of levothyroxine with cannabis-based medication, which is one of the big scientific field which is coming, drug-drug interaction. So because
Okay.
if you don't know that, then like you are going to treat the patient, for example. And why the drug-drug interaction? Because there are two major compounds that we know a lot of information. One is CBD and another is THC. So when you talk about the edibles, what happened? These edibles, that our liver metabolize those edibles. So that means if you are taking 50 milligram, your body is not going to see 50 milligram, because it is going to be like utilized by the liver metabolizing enzyme. And then after that, the bioavailability of that product will be maybe 20 milligrams, right?
Sure.
So, but CBD is a inhibitor of cytochrome P450 enzymes, liver enzymes, and THC is a activator of these liver enzymes. So that means if a specific drug, for example, let's say that, like blood thinners, warfarin, or like a hormonal therapy, tamoxifen, that these are that lot of data is out there with Epidiolex, right? So then what happened that if patients are taking CBD, that means it inhibit the metabolizing enzyme, that means it increase the serum concentration in the patient's body and not able to actually metabolize properly that how it should be. So that means clinicians need to titrate the dose according to that if the patient is taking CBD or TSC or full spectrum, broad spectrum, or isolate. So
It
it's a,
is
yeah.
I was gonna say it's amazing, right? And so I think what happens, and I feel like when you're talking about this, and I'm following you somewhat, don't take it personal. It is a lot of amazing information, right? And I think what it transpires to me, or what it really says to me, is some patients who get frustrated with, say, the medicinal program because it doesn't just have high THC, or their doctor doesn't recommend it. I think there tends to be in the medicinal world a sometimes disconnect between maybe the doctors who recommend and the patients who receive it, and then obviously the cultivators and the testing labs. And I think what you're saying, which makes a lot of sense, because if you are prescribed, or if you've ever watched a commercial on television for any sort of drug, right? At the end, there's that fast talking dude which comes on and he talks about all the side effects. And if you're taking all these varieties of medicines, please consult your doctor first. We haven't really seen that yet in the cannabis world. Like in the medicinal world, drug to drug interactions, as you say, is something that is a standard in a lot of other chemically based created medicines, but is not something that we take into as much consideration when it comes to cannabis treatments. And so, really, on top of testing, which is, finding that out about what the plant it consists of, some of it is going to be the human body, the endocannabinoid system being slightly different in all of us, and how that interacts. So you think that is really, what would you say then to those patients, right? I think patients get frustrated with testing, with the inconsistency of results, or that they can't test their own, or and they don't understand all this. So how do we help explain that to patients, that finding out all this information, talking to your doctor, telling them the drugs you're on and stuff is a good thing because it can help treat you better,
In
right?
a
I think
better way,
that's,
yeah, in
yeah.
a
So
better
how
way.
do
But
we
yeah, so one
convince
of
the
the biggest
naysayers?
thing is that, like that for the patient, that like we always advocate, I'm a big advocate of cannabis education, because I feel like that, like that how much that clinicians need to be educated, I think that patients also need to be educated in the same way, because it's very important for patients as well as clinicians need to be educated. Because what is the advantage of, let's say that, let's talk about first clinicians, what is the advantage to understand them the endocannabinoid system, to understand them that how the market is growing, what are the different products are there and everything, so that they can better treat the patients, right? But on the other hand, to what is the advantage that patient knows so much knowledge, because then patients understand that what is the most important thing, that what I'm going to talk with my doctor, and I should be very open to the doctor that I am taking that amount of CBD or that amount of TSC or broad spectrum, or how long I am taking and all this stuff, so that they can take these things in a consideration for the better treatment options. So that is the most important thing. And on the other hand, that if as a patient that you are on top of the literature, that like basically what happened that like now these days, that anything you are looking for, people just google on the google.com, and there are
Is
like 5,000 different like blogs will come up. But I always tell people that like that's okay, but one of the most scientific websites are basically pubmed.com, which is the NCI NIH websites, where basically most of the scientists and clinicians go there and publish their papers. So that is the place that where we extract our information, so that like these are the randomized trial, preclinical studies, etc. So just having a blog to saying something is not enough, because you have to have the information that which is legit. So that's why, and there are a lot of states that which are now doing to like third party testing to make sure that products are well tested. FDA always like have to randomly select the different companies and find to test that, so that they make sure that their certificate of analysis, what they are claiming, is
Mhm.
true, and
Sure.
their products are basically matching with what they are claiming. So that's why like it is frustrating to having so much regulations, but I think that these regulations are for good, and it is very important to test those products, because there are a lot of harmful thing there. And as well as that like there are lot of titration needed, And if the product consistency is not there, then what happened that we cannot trust on the data which is coming. The clinical data that which we are treating to the patient, it has no value. And that is also that one of the important thing that like we need to consider, that if we know that what we are treating, how much milligram or gram we are giving to the patients, and patients are also taking it seriously to maintain their journals, etc., makes a huge difference for the publications which is coming. So that's why that we have to be like a team, and globally that we all are fighting for the same cause. Only the difference is that maybe that like the different species in different countries are more potent than the species here, because we are trying to make like more hybrid plants, right? So
Yeah.
basically we are losing more the original genetics of the plant, and the
Um,
plant itself is basically meant and meant for to grow outdoors. So what happened that like when the plants grow in the outdoors, for example, I'm giving example that I've been in touch with lot of excuse me, a lot of companies in India, because right now India in the prefaces, and they started the medical cannabis program, but it is under Ayurveda. So basically what happened that like they give the different like companies to like make different cannabis based product. And one of the interesting part is that they actually allow the hemp seeds as a dietary supplement, which even didn't happen here in US, which is a big move. But on the other hand, that I feel like the education is still not even close
Not
to
there.
where it should be,
Yeah.
because I give lot of lectures there, and I felt like that like it's a initial phase, understanding is not that much. And the most important thing is that what I feel like that when people talk about the cannabis, they wanted to talk about more about the plant physiology, what plant is producing, etc. But the most critical part is that we have to appreciate about the endocannabinoid system, because it is about the body, the interaction between the body and the plant.
Mm.
So until unless that we appreciate that, because endocannabinoid system is one of the critical system, one of the major team player in our body to maintain the homeostasis in our body. And we have two different parts which is always in our body. Everything works like a lock and key. So endocannabinoid system works like a lock and key. So there are CB1 and CB2 receptors. But for FYI, that research is growing very fast. So it is not only CB1 and CB2. There are so many other receptors have already explored, more than 46 receptors. And some are TRVP1 receptors, GPR55 receptor, GPR18 receptors, etc. But on the other hand, there are the two molecules, anandamide and 2-AG body produce. Now you ask that, like, okay, so what happened with the personalized medicine? So
Yeah.
we know all those things. So then long time back that doctors didn't know that, like when they are treating that some patients were not responding, that what is the reason that why they are not responding. But now we have the tools, because we call that endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome. So we can sequence the specific patients to see that there is an anomaly, sequence anomaly in their CB1 and CB2. So that's why the phytocannabinoids are not able to bind. That means the key is not going to fit because there is a something problem
Sure.
in the receptor, right?
I
So,
Yeah.
so it's kind of amazing that the kind of tools we have, and the kind the amount of progress we all did globally is really encouraging.
Yeah.
There is so much to unpack there. I mean, the first thing I want to say is, and you talk about educating, but I think about the education as a parent, you know, giving the medication to their child who really doesn't have the voice on it, and how important it is to have the resources, you know, to kind of and the ability to feel the safety net to ask the doctor about some of these things. You know, I remember a couple years back, just the amount of fear that I talked to some parents about just giving the CBD to their children and bringing that up to the doctor, and just the barrier points there, you know. And so it's kind of good to hear, you know, another person keep pounding in the importance of that education. I also, you know, gosh, there's so much to dissect there. Another thing that I was thinking about was that research. You know, all of this research being done. Do you see any, and one of these days I'd like to talk to you specifically on the emerging technologies, but do you believe that this data is going to be easily accessible by other researchers across the board? Is everybody sharing in certain regards, or is it, in separate silos, hidden in separate countries all over the world? And, how do you see that data being shared essentially?
No, so it's a very good question, very interesting question. That's why, like I said, that that's why education is important. Knowing and understanding about the where to extract the data is really important, right? So, like you asked that, like, is it the data which is all in one place? It is all in one place. PubMed.com is the NIH website that where anybody can just type. Let's say that like I'm curious about cannabis and cancer, right? So you just look for cannabis and cancer and you type that meta-analysis, and it will give you everything worldwide, that whatever the data and whatever the research has been done so far. So because like it's a technology era that we are living. So there is nothing that like we cannot extract, because it's just so much information there. And the good part is that like, because world is also globally, we all are fighting for the same cause. So there are so much things are coming from different countries, and so much data is coming from US, Canada, Asian continent, etc., that it's kind of like gathering in a one place and giving a more and more, basically, a confidence to FDA to like allow more and more clinical trial in many different aspects. When you talk about the children's, and when we talk about the Epidiolex, right? So the Epidiolex story was very simple, because there was a girl is called Charlotte Fiji, and like their parents try everything, and the neurosurgeon who was the big advocate for the cannabis based medications, that they suggested, and they went to Colorado, and there was a Stanley brothers, and they were actually growing a specific actually strain which has a high CBD and low percentage of THC. Charlotte was suffering from more than 365 seizures in a week, and after that treatment, that she came back like almost like less than 10, right? So it's all about that, like, if you talk about these kind of stories, that was a wonderful story. But the thing is, like, it's all about the education, because if parents don't know that, then how they are going to advocate themselves in front of the doctors, in front of the society, that like, okay, that no, this is that what we are going to do. And another thing is that this kind of knowledge actually give you to understand about the risk benefit ratio, and that need to be discussed. The parents need to be discussed with the clinicians, that okay, somebody has, you have a child which is less than 3 years and they have 365 seizures. So are you going to worry about that, what will, how cannabis based medication will affect next 40 years, even though we don't know that this child is going to survive in next 10 years or not, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So it's kind of like a risk benefit ratio that you have to choose that. And and there are a lot of like discussions about pregnancy and use of cannabis based medication and what will happen. But the biggest issue is that we don't have any good survey data. Nobody is telling us that like, who are consuming that, pregnant women, that worldwide, that like, why they are consuming cannabis. Are they are consuming cannabis, what they are consuming cannabis, CBD, THC, broad spectrum, full spectrum, isolate, tinctures, terpenes, first thing, right? And then so variability is too much, and then after that, how much they are consuming, how many times they are consuming, what is the reason that why they are consuming. Are they consuming just for nausea, vomiting, hormonal flux, etc., or maybe that there is a all bad situation in a household, and they are like going through a really bad phase of life, and they need to reduce their anxiety and depression. So maybe that like, the whatever is happening in the next generation of the kiddos, maybe due to that, the stress that mother is going through, rather than cannabis, and cannabis is helping them to reduce their anxiety and stress to go through that pregnancy phase, right? So there's a lot to discuss and lot to explore about that whole scenario.
It
It's a
is
very complex situation, it's a very complex question.
Yeah, and it is so much about education, as you say. One of the things that we hear, and I think Dustin has talked about as well, with and when we said that we were going to have someone in the testing world, one of Dustin's compadres was immediately like, "All right, let's talk about the difference of independent labs, federally regulated labs, inconsistency in testing." It's a big thing. If you go to a lot of cannabis advocate social media groups, and I can think of a couple in particular, there are people who are just I think it's a lack of understanding, but so misconstrued on the testing process and why it exists and why they can't test their own medicine, or why it's different from lab A versus lab B versus lab C. Even the same product can be different because of gas chromatography versus high pressure, right? Based off how you're interpreting that. So, two questions, I guess, two part. Do you see anytime in the near future there being some sort, and I think the answer is yes, but I'm curious how long, a federally FDA kind of regulated testing process? And in the meantime, how do we do that? You're someone who's working as part of an independent lab. You have other testing labs in the state. Like, how do you think about that as far as the inconsistencies, especially from the patient end, if they get frustrated with, and let's say they could self-test. It says one thing on the certificate of analysis, but then they get it home, they take it to Joe Schmo's testing lab, and it's different. But I don't think that part about equipment and stuff comes into play. How do we talk to patients and doctors about testing results and inconsistencies, and then kind of where you see federal regulation, if any, coming in the future?
It's a very big question, and
Sure,
it's a
it
very
always.
interesting question. So what happened that like I'm going to like give you examples that,
Sure.
for example, that I said that this is the fastest growing field in each and every avenue, not only the testing, cultivation, extraction, everything, dispensary, medical treatment, etc. So what we are going through right now is a learning phase.
Mm,
We are learning how to regulate the things. We are learning how to standardize the things. We are learning that what are the different specific and very sensitive technology that which is really really good for the testing. So if somebody as a patient, that if they think that like okay, every lab should have like a same testing reports, is never been possible, because lab is a, it's any analytical lab for any areas, there's a variability. And
mm,
even the technique is very consistent, product is not consistent also. So again, that like it's kind of like lot of places that where the variability is, because like there's a lot of variability in the techniques, and there are a lot big companies which are coming, which are taking over the responsibility that like when we talk about gene editing technology, so we model a specific now technology which is called CRISPR-Cas technology, right?
okay.
So it's the same thing that like there are a couple of big companies like Agilent and Simarju. They are doing a lot of effort to standardize the process in their machines. But machine operators are also different from place to place, lab to lab, and
Always the
everything.
humans.
Yes.
Always the
So
humans.
lab to lab variability is there, product variability is there, but we are getting there because these machines are getting the companies are making the machines more and more smarter and more easier for us to give us a very precise and very sensitive value. So it is coming. It's kind of like a lot of things which are going behind, like, and lot of advanced technologies are coming that which is taking over. So it is really cool to see that like in the testing lab, that our testing lab, we have all Agilent technology. Agilent is one of the best company for the analytical lab globally. So their technology is the best technology we are using. And along with that, that I think that it is also important that again we all are learning, either it is a dispensary, either it is a medicinal use, cultivation, etc., education. And that's why more and more education institutes are opening. And I personally feel, because I teach in two different places. I used to teach Cleveland School of Cannabis. Due to now the time constraint, that I am not taking any courses right now, but I am teaching pharmacology of cannabis at St. Louis in their master's program.
Mm,
So what I feel like, that those people who are very interested in education, it's they are giving a lot of good benefit to the field, because you are adding a lot along with that, what you are doing to the field. I feel like that if somebody is from the chemistry background and doing the analytical lab for the testing, if they have the cannabis background, they can add to that lab a lot, rather than just coming from the cannabis background or environmental testing background. It's the same thing. So we are
sure.
trying to basically learning and grabbing the new things and taking more better steps to refine the things for the betterment. For example, that like either the treatment, medical treatment, right? So we are, before that we were not thinking about drug interaction. Now we are more thinking about drug-drug interaction, which is a very important point, right? Before we were not talking about pharmacogenomics because as a personalized therapy. Now we are more thinking about that. Then we are learning about the different kind of terpenes, terpenoids, that how we are going to utilize that, what are the different information. So I feel like that, like we are getting there. And definitely that one of the important thing that I think that it will be a very advantageous that long term, that if the federal government, like they have their own labs, then what and states have their own laboratory, third party laboratory, so that they can randomly pick that any products in the market, and they test it, and then they can actually rule out that okay, who is doing the good job, and uh, is the regulations are better for them, and like what we are seeing in the market. So it is very important to actually cross check these kind of things, because it's not a pharmaceutical medicine that like okay, let's say that a specific pain medication is the same pain medication from last 30 years. It's not the case. It's every time it's different, right? So
Yeah.
that's the reason that regulations are high, and regulations need to be more refined for sure. And long term, I think that we are going to see that like how regulations are changing. States are also learning, state officials are also learning that how to deal with either it is a cultivation, either it is a testing, or either it is, for example, that like Ohio itself for the testing, that for the microbials, that they only allow the plating technique. And there's nothing wrong with the plating technique. It's one of the basic technology from microbiology. But on the other hand, there are so much advanced technology like polymerase chain reaction, PCR based technologies are there, which are far sensitive and far less time consuming. So then
So
down the road, that hopefully that Ohio will move that direction and change the regulation, so that more testing facilities will be using PCR based technologies as well as the plating, both, so that they can reduce and minimize their time point to give the results to the consumers and give the more sensitive and reliable data also.
So do you think that the non-standardization across the board has actually helped to not to to move the technology forward? If it was standardized, do you think that we would have stifled a lot of this innovation because there wouldn't have been a need? The baseline would have been set, you would have met it and moved on. Or do you think that the market in general would always, kind of push for companies to differentiate themselves by using better and better technology?
I think
And
that
then
this market will never be saturated, because this is such a wonderful plant. It's so much complexity is there, that like it will never saturate. Trust me that even though there are so much standardization is already there, there's so much room to grow, so much room to betterment. For example, that when we talk about the entourage effect, right? So we are keep exploring that okay, what combination will be good for what kind of patients. And it is so much variability in the humans as well as so much variability with the plant, that is amazing to see this interaction. The only thing that what we are more and more kind of like needing is the standard operating treatment protocol, and which can only happen if we reach up to that point where there is a consistency of the purity and potency of the plant. And
right.
again, that it will happen, but we are not there yet for sure.
I envision, BC will hear me and roll his eyes every time I hear it, but I really do believe and he already knows what's about to come out of my mouth too. But I really do believe in the innovation of the blockchain and what it would do for the cannabis industry, and the way this data would be shared across the board. And that's not just lab results to show the consistency, but also customer experience dealt to a certain line, or anonymized to a certain degree or something. But who do you think deserves to see all this lab data? Do you think that every bit of this should be public? Do you think that only the lab should be talking to and seeing
No,
only
it's
the
again that it's a research data, right? So either it is a clinical research data or a preclinical research data. Research is always and always very open, because research is such kind of thing that like more you publish, more its value is there. More you keep it, there's no value. So that means more and
Right.
more you publish, that more and more people will quote that research. That means more and more, feedback you get that what happened. And like you said that, like when we are talking about the expanding and progression and learning from our mistakes and everything, NIDA produced the research grade cannabis for, to running the clinical trial. And if you see from last 3 to 4 years, the amount of different research grant they are opening is amazing. So
Staggering.
so they appreciate that thing. They are seeing those things. So they are trying to provide more opportunities to the investigators in many different university settings. That hey, this is the grant. Why not? You can, and that's the reason that, one of the biggest reason that we went through just now a big pandemic, and now we are talking without mask, of course, that that COVID-19, right? So there are so much data is out there with so many different kind of mechanism, because even if the research was not there, how we will know that what it is doing with the lung inflammation, and how it is entering in the body, and how we should appreciate the acidic cannabinoids, because cannabinoids have the three forms in the plant. One is the neutral form, one is the acidic form, and one is the varinic form. So like I said, the variability is too much, that so you can just keep digging, and then we didn't even touch the surface yet. So it's a so much. And then after that, okay, if you talk about that, okay, now epidiolex is out there, we are also running a lot of clinical trial. So we wanted FDA to approve more drugs. FDA needs only two things. First application, they need two things, because I have a degree in pharmacology from Ohio State. So I worked as a regulatory consultant for two different companies. So I know that how the regulatory process is. So they need first that, first application, they ask that what is the mechanism, how much detail you know about that compound, and what is the safety of that compound. Show me that two things, and then after that we go deep. When you show these two things, then after that it will talk about, okay, what is the pharmacokinetics profile, what is the pharmacodynamics profile, what is
Mhm.
the toxicity, and so on. Best part is that being in the field of cancer research, looking for new drugs from last 22 years, and going through the hoops of, either small molecules, big molecules, monoclonal antibodies, receptors, targeted agonists, antagonists, small peptides, etc., that I know only one thing, that it is hard to find a compound which has so many different angles to help cancer patients, and not even harming the normal cells. So that's why I said that this plant has a preventive as well as therapeutic properties. So if somebody is even using that plant for very casually also, it will help regenerate your nerve cells, bone cells, yeah, boost your immunity, etc. On the other hand, if you think about the cancer patients have a depression and anxiety, it can cure that. Chemotherapy induce appetite and vomiting, that can, manage that one and induce your appetite. It has the anti-cancer property, it can manage cancer cachexia and anorexia. And then after that, there are so many any drug you name it, that it cannot differentiate the normal cells with the cancer cells, and it don't harm the cancer cells. It's very specific to the cancer cells. So it's amazing to see that something is so specific and has so many utilities in one go, and we are not appreciating that.
Do you think it is like obviously the federal legality causes a problem in this, but how long then? Because it sounds like as we do more research and we keep talking about this, like we're still in the beginning, we have a ton of research to go. It's always going to be some new, probably pretty spectacular data that just we continue to find out about this plant. How long, Hamant, do you think before not just your basic doctor, like a cannabis recommending doctor, but how long and maybe federal legality has to happen before
it's a
a GP is recommending this?
it's a $1 million question. We all are waiting the answer of this question, and we are hoping that soon. So let's see that what will happen, because again, that like when we talk about the complexity of the interaction of the plant with the body, I always give the example of complexity of the legality and regulations and policy also. So it's really complex, and again, one step, one at a time. So slowly we are heading towards that maybe we will sort it out about the banking situation with this field, which is a really frustrating and also very challenging for those business owners who are working in the field, because dealing with the cash is not fun. On the other hand, that once this will resolve, that hopefully up to that point that we have that more data will be there, because again, that like I said, that data is there. And if you see that the acceptance of the clinical trial by FDA with many different diseases, specifically neurodegenerative diseases as well as cancer, it's increasing a lot with the time, because FDA is seeing and appreciating the global data, that how valuable the plant is and how much it has the utility. So why not we and like one of the wonderful thing that in this plant, because I've been in the drug discovery for a long time, and drug discovery is a very complex process but very long process. So you have some drug and you think that it will be maybe very effective for the cancer, but you cannot do anything before you uh, use that drug to show that like the cancer cells in the petri dish, that how it is effective in the petri dish. And then when it is effective the petri dish, then what is the target and so many binding, affinity, etc. And then you go to the preclinical studies, which is the mouse models. And then after that you move to the mouse, guinea pigs, and then or more models. And then after that like, okay, now everything looks good with the preclinical models, we need to move to the human studies. You apply for the application for FDA, and then they will go through all your data, and then they will decide that what will happen. The beauty in the field of medical cannabis is that we are getting the human data by the observational data from the patients who are self-reporting, as well as the medical cannabis clinics. Oh
Yeah.
my God. So we are already getting that data from the humans, and we are collecting those data and telling FDA that, hey, there are, and the wonderful part is that we are at that era that education and the stigma is getting less and less. And also that, technology is giving more and more opportunity to the people and the old generation to appreciate, to learn, and to read and see that, oh no, it is not bad. I should try it, because there are options are there. And then after that they are writing, oh, I use this and it's amazing. And for example, there are a lot of great initiative, like BC, you must know that about Dr. Bridget Williams, and she published that book Courage with Cannabis.
Mhm.
So it is not only the one initiative, there are so many different options are there to get educate yourself. I moderate one session in the Clubhouse with three different doctors, two from US, one from Netherlands, and one pharma D. So we all five people, we discuss about cannabis science every Saturday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And there are a lot of amazing topics. Epidiolex and autism we discuss, cancer we discuss, drug interaction we discuss. So it's about that open discussion with the clinicians that who are treating the patient, as well as the scientists like me, that like who are keep doing the research to see that where research is heading, and testing the product. So it's kind of like there are so many good platforms are there to understand about the plant, to ask your questions that, hey, like, oh, what do you feel about this, and I did this. And there are a lot of blogs, like you said, with cultivation for extraction, etc. That it's amazing time that like we should utilize that information to understand about the plant, the interaction, and how to use the plant which can be benefited. Because of course that like I always tell people that when they talk about that side effects, everything has a side effect. You give me 20 glass of water, it will have a side effect in my body. Yeah, and it's just
uh,
water, right? So nothing is good for your body which is above the limit. So
I
if you are
appreciate
yeah.
I was gonna say I appreciate, and I know Dustin has something he wants to ask you, but I appreciate your plugging ability, right? You plug in the Clubhouse, and we'll put a link to that 10 a.m. till noon on Saturdays. Though I feel a little bit taken aback, come on, and the whole list of all the amazing cannabis shows, because cannabis on wayward.media not mentioned there, right? So let's make sure we're gonna plug and drop plugs. Come on, we gotta step up on that game. Follow us socially at NeatWM. Check out Dr. Hemant Kumar Bid on LinkedIn. Like, we'll get all those links down there. Dustin, you wanted to talk about something? Go.
I was just going to say I could listen to Dr. Bid talk
All
all
right.
day. Like I just want to put him on while I do literally everything I do throughout my day. There's just so much information that I'm just like, I'm going to be replaying this conversation back in my head for a couple hours after this. It's amazing.
I'm sure you'll join us back again, Dr. Bid. I'm sure we'll see you back here again for sure.
And I definitely am going to be joining in on that Clubhouse one of these days, just to be able to sit and listen myself as a creep in the background, I guess.
No, it's a great room. And not saying that because I moderate the room, but
Oh,
I
yes.
really enjoyed the room because I get the clinical perspective, I get the pharmacological perspective, as well as the research perspective. So it's kind of like a merger of three different worlds together. It's amazing. For example, that because the pharma decode that like he bring the pharmacological aspect of that, and then Dr. Fry is there, that she is a pediatrician, and then Michael Gee is there, that who brings that all the different clinical perspectives. So it's amazing to discuss about. And then Nick is there, who is from Netherlands. So he is basically the other side of the world and bringing a lot of experience and sharing a lot of great experience with his patients and what's going on in his country, etc. So it's amazing to discuss with those people to run the Clubhouse for sure.
All right, slightly different path, because we are going to run out of time here soon. We'll clearly have Dr. Hemant Kumar Bid back on. Hopefully, you'll join us on our April 20th show. Don't forget, noon p.m. till 4:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Dustin and I, 4 hours and 20 minutes of live streaming here on Wayward Media Because Cannabis. We'll have a variety of guests stopping by, hopefully a bunch of people stopping by to join us for short conversations. Obviously, we hope Dr. Hemant Kumar Bid can join us. I got a question for you. You look at someone, you have probably held in your hands some fine quality herb, as the kids might say out there, Dr. Bid. And so you also get to look at the COAs, the certificate of analysis. When you look at those, what says to you good quality cannabis? Like, what numbers on that report? Is it simply just the lack of pesticides? Are there terpenes that you look at? Like, when you see a COA of a cannabis product, what do you look at? Like, I look at THC potency, and that's probably it, right? Because I don't really know where else to go. What do you see? What's important on a certificate of analysis when it comes to cannabis testing?
When you talk about the COA, always talk about the two terminology, potency and purity.
Potency
So
and purity.
if that's testing of a certain lab, that they can give like all different kind of range of different cannabinoids, either it is major is like it's very common, but minor cannabinoids. So machines are able to pick up that all minor level of cannabinoids. It's very, very helpful to see and gather the information that, okay, I am using this full spectrum, but I'm seeing that lot of minor cannabinoids give a lot of, the weight to the cannabis field and appreciate the minor cannabinoids. But on the other hand, that like I said, that if we treat this as a medicine, we are always looking for the pure product. It should be free from pesticides, mycotoxins, all different kind of salmonella, mold, yeast, total yeast and mold, and mycotoxins, as well as like residual solvents, anything that like heavy metals, etc. Because again, like I said, variability is too much. So you have to rule out those variabilities so that like everything looks good. And like I said, down the road, hopefully that like there will be labs that where either it is federally or state level labs, that they are randomly checking the efficiency and the maintenance of the standard of these products, so that like patients have the leverage to use that like pure products. And in the medical field, that we will be able to actually strengthen the medical data which we are producing by using the good quality products.
We've talked about parents being educated, patients being educated. We've talked about the labs and the state being educated.
What do you? I think we just lost Dustin for a freeze for a moment. He's really deep in thought, Dr. Bid. He's just thinking depth.
I'm here.
Oh, he's back, right? We're back again. All right, Dustin, you were talking about parental education as last we heard.
Yeah, so we talked about education across so many different boards, but the part of the industry that I didn't hear it come about is, what do you think the cultivator's job of education is? And do you think that just providing a lab result on their jar and having some of those minor cannabinoids on there and those purity results, do you think that's all they really need to do? And then it's up to the job as the patient to be more inclined to what that means? Or do you think there should be more, specific talk from them?
No, I think that, like that's why that there are different courses that which is specifically cultivation related, that, like me and BC were involved on that. But the thing is like, again, that cultivation itself is a very deep field, because, and again, it depends upon that what kind of person, that which level he is working and what kind of responsibility he has. Based on that, the education should be that level, right? That if somebody is just, a trimmer, then they don't need that much of a details, but definitely having a good knowledge to enter to that field makes a big difference and give the opportunity to the people to grow more very fast in their career. So it's like I said, that every different angles, either it's extraction, cultivation, testing, medicinal feed, bud tenders, or whole regulatory part, etc. More and more knowledge we have, more and more, understanding we have about the policies, about the how the plant grows, and what we can do to improve the process with respect to cultivation or medical field or medical treatment, etc. It's always a big advantage. And that's why I think that, like more and more education system will open a big door. That if you think about that, 5 years back, that, like there was a not too much demand and screening for the cultivation facilities or extraction facilities, that certain staff need to be certified or have certain kind of certification. But now everybody is asking that, do you have any background in cannabis or any kind of certification you have, and everything, because it's a growing field. It is making a lot of, employment, opening the lot of doors for the opening for different kind of employment, etc. So then the demand for the employers is also increase a lot. And I think that it's fair, because it is very important for the field to add more, knowledge to that, so that everybody can give their perspective. That if somebody is coming from agriculture background and they are doing the cannabis, then maybe they are not expert in cannabis agriculture, but they have the expertise, and it's again another plant. So they can very quickly pick that thing and utilize their agriculture experience to give a better perspective, so that maybe, there are good new ideas come to that cultivation facility.
It's interesting. I think to both your points, that what you said, Dustin, and as well as you, Dr. Bid, I think this change, the public knowledge of information, having COA's certificate of analysis publicly available, having cultivators by state requirement have to put some of this information on labels, I think it has forced the cultivator to work a little harder. Right. I think it's beyond the days of a field of dream style. If you grow it, they will smoke it. Right. Because we've moved beyond that. I think most people, particularly in medicinal programs, but even as more states become adult use, as more education happens on the patient level, however they figure it out, you become more sophisticated shoppers. It's like anything else, right? It's like going to a fast food restaurant 4 years ago and not knowing how many calories a Big Mac has, and then having a bit of sticker shock now when you see that information on there. And what that had to do for food places was reinvent. Right now we got salad items and low carb items, and we try to lower that calorie number so it's not as impressive or not as scary. So I think cannabis cultivators have that same issue.
Yeah.
It used to be, hey, bro, here's my weed, smoke it, right? We've had to force, or they've had to force themselves to become better advocates, more educated themselves, and then work with people like CP Labs or whatever, with what Dr. Bid is doing, and work with companies like that to, because the patients know, right? I know sometimes we talk about patients getting frustrated with irregularities, but they know more now, sometimes more than the cultivators, about endocannabinoid systems, CBD interaction, CB1, CB2 receptors, like all these other acronyms that Dr. Hemant Kumar Bid has wowed us with today. They know this stuff. So cultivators have to get better. They have to get better because the customer is going to be pickier. There's so much competition that the person who just says, here, bro, here's some weed, is going to be left out. It's going to be the people that have more knowledge, I think, going forward. I mean, I
No,
think
no, I totally agree. And that education actually put a lot of pressure on each and every angle of the business in the
yeah,
industry, because everybody knows, because the consumer knows that what's going on. Consumer knows that how to read the COA, what are the different effects, how to read those things to understand that this is good, this is valuable, or this is not valuable, or when to ask the questions, how to ask the questions. That makes a big difference.
It is pretty impressive. Dr. Bid, I really appreciate you joining us today on Because Cannabis here on Wayward Media. It's been a wonderful conversation. Obviously, if you want to go check out something else that Dr. Hemant Kumar Bid and I talked about, you can go find episodes of Wayward Planet. Find that on Wayward Media. You can find the link. You can also, Because Cannabis is available now on audio, any audio platform you listen to it on. If you find the Wayward Media channel, you'll find Dr. Hemant Kumar Bid. We'll probably toss that in the notes for you as well. Always great stuff, Hemant. Always wonderful to talk to you. You are so good at what you do and having an understanding of it and talking sometimes a little above my head, but mostly I'm digesting it, which maybe I'm getting smarter. Maybe that's it. I feel like last time we spoke, it was so far above my head, and now I'm just like a little bit above my head. But it is amazing stuff. And really, your passion for not just the medicinal side, but the plant and the advocacy for patients. I think Dustin saw. I think that's the one thing I saw today, Dustin. Any closing comments? Was the passion for the medicine as a patient, right?
Yeah, it was music to my ears to actually hear it coming from him. It's not every day, for years and years I would talk to my own doctor, and just you just wouldn't get any of that in any capacity for any reason. And it's so important from a patient's perspective to know that it exists out there, and that and that they really are knocking down all these barriers that allow these discussions to be had with some of their other colleagues and across the board. And it's a snowball effect that is so necessary, and it's powerful. And I was really glad to hear it. I could already hear it when I re-listened to the episode from Wayward Planet quite a while ago, but I needed it today as a patient. So I thank you truly for being on, and I really enjoyed this talk.
No, it's a great pleasure to talk with you guys and catch up with BC for sure. It being a long time, but it's always fun to talk with you guys for sure.
Definitely appreciate it. Hopefully we'll see you on our 420 show. Don't forget, we'll be live 4 hours and 20 minutes on YouTube, Because Cannabis, wayward.media, 12 p.m. Eastern to 4:20 p.m. Eastern on April 20th. New shows every Friday. Don't forget, every single Friday, brand new shows that you're seeing right now today, this Friday. Brand new shows every Friday, audio a couple weeks later after the fact. Don't forget to follow us there. All right, everyone, that's it for today. Don't forget to subscribe to the show. Appreciate it very much. And we'll talk to everyone soon. Take care, everybody.